Year-old Bangladeshi national set off a pipe bomb strapped to his body. The bomb went off prematurely. As a result, only 5 others were injured in the explosion. None of their injuries are life-threatening. The attack took place at the height of the morning rush hour in a busy subway passage between Times Square and the Port Authority. But the attack never would have occurred at all if Congress had supported one of President Trump's agenda priorities. That is, to end chain migration and move to a merit-based immigration policy. We take that up here tonight. Also, California firefighters still struggling to keep up with 6 wildfires that are raging in the southern part of the state. The worst fire has exploded to 230,000 acres. It's now the 5th largest fire in the state's history. We'll have a full report. And Alabama voters go to the polls tomorrow to choose their next senator. Republican Judge Roy Moore locked in a tight race with Democrat Doug Jones as liberal outside groups are pumping millions of dollars into the state in an effort to turn the Senate seat blue for the first time since 1992. And the deep state exposed, Fox News reporting, a senior Justice Department official demoted last week for concealing his meetings with the firm behind the anti-Trump dossier had even closer ties to the smear merchant Fusion GPS than previously reported. We take all of that up here tonight. Our top story, a terrorist attack striking New York City for the second time in as many months. A failed suicide bomber inspired by the Islamic State set off a handmade explosive during the morning rush hour inside one of Manhattan's busiest commuter corridors. The 27-year-old Bangladeshi national chose that location because of its Christmas-themed posters, a nod to radical Islamist terrorist attacks against Christmas markets. But according to the White House, the suspect would have never been in the country if President Trump's immigration policies had been in place. Fox News senior correspondent Rick Leventhal with our report.
A massive police response on the streets of New York City for a terror attack underground between the largest bus terminal in America and the busiest subway station in Manhattan. At 7:20 this morning in a pedestrian walkway below 42nd Street, authorities say the suspect, identified as Akayed Allah, detonated a device described as a low-tech pipe bomb attached to his body with Velcro and zip ties. It's unclear if the device exploded early. Allah was headed in the direction of Times Square. Allah was the only one to suffer serious injuries. 5 others had minor issues described as headaches and ringing in their ears. Allah is a 27-year-old Brooklyn resident who emigrated from Bangladesh on an F-43 family immigrant visa in February 2011. A lawful permanent resident who benefited from the extended family chain migration program, which between 2005 and 2015 allowed 9.3 million new immigrants to enter the U.S. because of close family ties, a practice the Trump administration has been critical of.
And so we know that the president's policy calls for an end to chain migration, which is what this individual came to the United States through. And if his policy had been in place, then that attacker would not have been allowed to come in the country.
The former livery cab driver reportedly told investigators the attack was revenge for U.S. strikes overseas. Authorities are now closely examining evidence.
This incident was captured on transit system video. A further review and interview of witnesses is underway. A thorough background investigation into Akayed Allah is being conducted by the Joint Terrorist Task Force.
Allah suffered lacerations and burns to his abdomen and hands and is now in custody in the hospital. Authorities are searching his home and other locations for possible clues as the city remains on high alert.
This is New York. The reality is that we are a target by many who would like to make a statement against democracy, against freedom. We have the Statue of Liberty in our harbor, and that makes us an international target.
Tonight, President Trump releasing a statement blaming a flawed system for allowing the suspect to get into the U.S., saying, quote, America must fix its lax immigration system, which allows far too many dangerous, inadequately vetted people to enter our country. Tonight, relief here in New York City that the suspect is in custody, but concern the next time we may not be this lucky. Lou?
Rick, thank you very much. Rick Leventhal reporting. Our first guest tonight says it's time to take the handcuffs off law enforcement and let cops be cops when targeting the Islamic State domestic threat. Joining us tonight, former NYPD officer, former Secret Service agent, serving under both President George W. Bush and President Obama, Dan Bongino. Dan, good to have you with us. When you say take the cuffs off, what do you mean exactly?
Well, Lou, unfortunately, when you talk to a lot of police contacts, whether it be with the NYPD or at the federal law enforcement level, there are obstacles put in front of them when the cases involve things like mosques and things like that. I get it. I understand there are political sensitivities here. But political sensitivities should not override the need of a police department, or in this case, federal law enforcement in some of these other cases, to keep the American people safe. We have to let cops be cops. You know, Lou, just a simple example for you. You know, when you go out and you investigate the Russian mob, you go to communities where Russians tend to congregate. It's not anti-Russian. It's investigative common sense. I'm not suggesting blanket surveillance on mosques all over the country. No one's suggesting that all over the country. Nobody's saying that. We're just saying that the obstacles put in front of them due to these political sensitivities are nonsense, and they're contributing to a very dangerous environment.
And President Trump has made it clear he believes that we have to go to a merit-based immigration system so that the police officers, law enforcement at the local, county, and state level don't have to worry about this at all, at least minimally, because permitting people to come into this country under a lottery, as did the previous terrorist who killed 8 people in New York 2 months ago, or through the chain migration. He's a 20-year, at the time, he was a 20-year-old brother who's been brought in for a sister of the person who got the first visa. It's madness.
Lou, it's not only madness, it's suicidal. This is insane. Lou, the FBI, there are people within the FBI and the DHS who have said on the record multiple times that the vetting process for people overseas is not adequate. I'm not suggesting we should stop immigration from overseas, but maybe stopping immigration from countries where there's not an adequate record system. I mean, this person was from Bangladesh, but that we're still admitting people from some portions of the world where there's no DMV to check. What do you think? They're checking the library cards for some of these folks? This is insane. And on the chain migration thing, Lou, this is another just crazy policy. It just leads to an exponentially growing number of people who have a claim on American citizenship simply because they know someone within the country. That is not a way to run an immigration policy. It's a way to basically decimate your labor pool and create an unsafe situation.
Yeah, and it's instructive to think that during the 2016 campaign, President Trump was the only candidate talking about ending chain migration, going to meritocracy, which is an American concept, for our immigration system. He was hooted down by the national left-wing media and also, of course, his opponents in the race because they weren't PC, he wasn't being PC paralyzed as they were.
Right. I mean, he won an electoral college landslide. He basically, if Hillary Clinton was running for governor of California and New York, she did a great job. Other than that, the rest of the country voted clearly and resoundingly for Donald Trump in states that no Republican had ever been able to touch before. And Lou, what was the issue he ran on? Immigration, build the wall. I mean, I sarcastically say to people in some limited circles, we call that a clue. But outside of the D.C., New York Amtrak corridor there, maybe California, nobody seems to get it, that this is an issue that's really bothering a lot of American people who are like, wait, when does America First policy start again? We get it. We've been compassionate to the world for a very long time. We've taken in millions of people. But when do we start worrying about us and our kids, too? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing xenophobic about that. It's common sense.
Absolutely. And it's also the agenda on which this president was elected, a commitment to the American people, whether it be border security, the wall, whether it be getting rid of a diversity lotto, if you will, and simply suggesting to people, if you're related to someone like a second cousin, come to America. It's stunning where we are. Dan Bongino, as always, good to talk with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Good to be here. We're
coming right back. There's a lot more. Stay with us. President Trump backing Republican candidate Judge Roy Moore to push his American First agenda in the U.S. Senate.
We can't afford to have a liberal Democrat who is completely controlled by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So get out and vote for Roy Moore.
Just hours to go until voting begins in Alabama's pivotal Senate race. We take that up with Jason Chaffetz here next. And the massive wildfires raging in California, now larger than New York City and Boston combined. New evacuations underway. Ferocious Santa Ana winds still gusting about 50 miles an hour. We'll have a full report straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back. More evidence tonight of out-of-control conflicts of interest at the Justice Department, links between a senior Justice Department official and the smear group behind the discredited Trump dossier run far deeper than anyone has previously reported. Fox News Chief Washington Correspondent James Rosen now has the shocking report.
Lou, good evening. New disclosures confirmed to Fox News by top investigators on the House Intelligence Committee show that the link between Fusion GPS, the firm behind that anti-Trump dossier, and a top Justice Department official ran deeper than previously known. Fox News was the first to tell you last week about the abrupt demotion on Wednesday of Bruce Ohr, the Associate Deputy Attorney General, who was stripped of that title and his fourth-floor office at Main Justice amid an ongoing investigation into his contacts with the two leading figures in the controversy over the dossier, meetings that DOJ officials told Fox News Ohr had withheld from his superiors. House Intelligence Committee staff uncovered that Ohr met last year with both Christopher Steele, the former British spy who authored the dossier with input from Russian sources, and that Ohr also met last year with Glenn Simpson, the founder of Fusion GPS, the opposition research firm that paid Mr. Steele with funding from the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Now Fox News has confirmed that Nellie Ohr, an academic Russia expert and the wife of Bruce Ohr, worked for Fusion GPS last year, indeed was paid by the opposition research firm through the summer and fall of 2016, a timeline that places her on the company payroll around the time the dossier was funneled to the FBI and perhaps through the election, some 2 weeks after which her husband met secretly with Glenn Simpson. The House Intelligence Committee Chairman Nunes told Fox News in a statement today is looking into all facets of the connections between the Department of Justice and Fusion GPS, including Mr. Ohr. DOJ, which initially claimed Bruce Ohr had been stripped of his top-line duties because he was holding down 2 jobs at DOJ, and that was, quote, unusual, today had no comment about the revelation that Mrs. Ohr worked for Fusion GPS last year. Lou.
Quite a report, James. Thanks. James Rosen. Joining me now, former Republican Congressman from Utah, Jason Chaffetz, now Fox Business contributor. Great to see you. And let's start with this. How in the world does the Justice Department not know where spouses of top officials work and what their connections are to highly active smear merchants like GPS Fusion or Fusion GPS?
Well, thanks for having me on, Lou. I don't believe that they are so naive. I actually do think they know this, and I do think they've known it for some time. I think the deep state is alive and well in the Department of Justice, and I think there's a reason why Mr. Nunes is the chairman of the Intel Committee in the House, as well as Trey Gowdy and others there on the Intel Committee, have been given the stiff arm and stonewalled. They wanted the financial records. They wanted the details so that they could actually interview people in person. And there's a reason why for months, despite a subpoena and other requests, they were given the stiff arm. It's because I think they actually did know.
They actually did know. And if that is the case, Robert Mueller should turn his direction directly to the Democratic Party, the DNC, and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and those, as you put it, the deep staters within the Justice Department are more likely what they are partisans, left-wing partisans trying to subvert a president.
Well, so I got deep concerns about Attorney General Sessions. Where is he in all of this? You know, and the Obama administration had some deep-seated people put into place, but it's President Trump's Department of Justice at this point, and it's not good enough for the FBI director to go before the Committee of Jurisdiction, as they did last week, the Judiciary Committee, and say, well, that's better in another setting, or that's better in somewhere else. Those people all have security clearances. They're the Committee of Jurisdiction, and for about 4 or 5 hours, the FBI director, saw no evil, wouldn't talk about any evil. But that's not the way our country works. It has for the last several years, but that's not the way it's supposed to work.
As I listened to Christopher Wray, I thought I was listening to a Democrat, and that suddenly time had rolled back to the days of the Obama administration. I couldn't imagine his answers being one iota different.
Well, I wish Chairman Goodlatte had made him sit there and actually answer the questions. If they need to go into executive session because there's something classified, then do it. But, the FBI director tried to get away with, well, we can't show you that in this setting and it's classified. Every member of Congress has a classified clearance. And if they had cleared the room and gone into that, that's how you do oversight. But again, Intel is taking the lead on this. I believe in Devin Nunes. I believe in Trey Gowdy, Tom Rooney. You got some really good people. Mike Conaway is right in the thick of this thing, and they've been at it for months, and I think they're making some progress. At least I hope they are.
Devin Nunes is obviously making progress because his investigators on the House Intelligence Committee have produced real results. I can't say that of any other committee over the course of 8 years of the Obama administration who produced tangible, concrete results that resulted in consequence. Am I wrong?
Well, look, I mean, I was chairman of a committee for a while during that administration. Right. I also served when Darrell Issa was the chairman. Right. But you see what happens. Even when you found, like, for instance, in the case of the IRS, when you actually do find wrongdoing, what does the Department of Justice do? They say, oh, well, they reached a settlement. They apologized, but there was no consequence. Nobody in handcuffs. Nobody actually held accountable. And we could go down the list, everything from Fast and Furious to the IRS to Benghazi to the Hillary Clinton email scandal to what's going on with Fusion GPS to Uranium One. I mean, how many do we have to list out? And you can't find anybody who's actually held accountable in the government.
Your best counsel to the president.
Look, my best counsel of the president is it's your Department of Justice. You are the only constitutionally elected officer who actually has control over there. And I don't buy into the Democrats about obstruction of justice, anything else. Let Lady Justice operate with a blindfold, but you better clear the deck because you got people in there that are not calling balls and strikes.
I love your idealism.
Bring it to a grand jury. Bring it to a grand jury and let citizens actually look at the evidence and make a decision. That's the way our system's supposed to work. The FBI is not supposed to put the brakes on it before it even gets to a grand jury. But take the evidence, put it before them, and let them make a decision. Just try prosecuting somebody.
What happens if Jeff Sessions actually does his job? I have great respect. I've always had great respect for Jeff Sessions. Yeah. He's been an important voice in the U.S. Senate. His disappearance makes me think either they have an enormous file on him in the deep state that is prohibiting him from serving the president he signed up to serve in the nation he signed up to. He has to see how deep the crisis is and how profound the moment is for him to get to work and really assure that justice is done here. I've never seen anything as corrupt, politically corrupt, as one special counsel, that of Robert Mueller. Person after person with conflicts of interest, and Jeff Sessions throws his hands in the air and recuses himself over Russian coalition. Every piece of evidence found to this point by the FBI, all of the committees, has shown collusion, all right, but it's collusion between the Democrats and the Russians, not Republicans.
I have sat with Attorney General Sessions in person. I've talked to him on the phone, and my own personal opinion, I don't think the Attorney General is up to the job. I just don't. That's just, it's sad because I think he has a storied history. He's done a lot for this country. But the moment he got there, he had to recuse himself. He's nowhere to be found on pushing this. And I do think you're going to see Congress, particularly over the next couple of weeks, including next week, really ratchet it up because I don't think that they're actually living up to their job and administering justice. I'm not saying it has to go to Republicans' way. I just don't see them moving forward on any of these fronts.
Why the Republicans' way? I mean, we elected a Republican president. We've got Republican leadership in both houses. Why in the world aren't the leaders of the Senate and the House standing shoulder to shoulder with President Trump? Because they could bring this thing to a conclusion.
I don't know, Lou, and I think you're on top of it, and I think you're expressing a lot of concern that most Americans that are looking at this are seeing from coast to coast. They just want balls and strikes called. They just want an honest opinion. You've got over 100,000 employees, 10,000 attorneys, but somehow Mueller's team is chock full with donors to the Democratic Party. I mean, I just don't understand that. And it continues. And there are a lot of good, hardworking, patriotic people there at the FBI, at the DOJ. But do you really have to have this clown car with people whose wife works for the firm that's being investigated? I mean, seriously, you write that in a book, put it in a movie, most people wouldn't believe it.
The special counsel investigating collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, and every single connection so far has been between the Democratic apparatus, the Democratic Party, the DNC, and Russia. This is astounding. And you can't even get the national left-wing media to focus for a moment on it. They keep holding up a shiny object or maybe a dull one, but they keep on supporting in complicity with the deep state and the Democratic Party. Jason Chaffetz, it's great to have you here. Come back soon.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you. Be sure to vote on our poll tonight. The question is, do you believe it's time for Congress to end chain migration? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook and Instagram, Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street, another record-breaking performance for stocks. The Dow gaining 57 points, the S&P up 8, both at all-time highs. The Nasdaq up 35, volume on the big board over 3 billion shares traded. And Bitcoin futures surging more than 19% in its trading debut, only 19%. Robert Shiller joining other economists who call Bitcoin a bubble. And it appears to me that no bubble in economic history has been more obvious than this one. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, Alabama's special election for the U.S. Senate tomorrow. Who comes out on top? A full report on efforts to get out the vote. Straight ahead. Stay with us. It's election eve in Alabama, and a new Fox News poll has Democrat Doug Jones leading Republican Roy Moore by 10 points. But that poll seems to be the outlier. The Real Clear Politics polling average has Moore leading by 2.2%. To sort it all out, Fox News correspondent Jonathan Seri with the Roy Moore campaign in Midland City, Alabama, with our report.
These allegations are completely false. I did not date underage women. I did not molest anyone.
Roy Moore's denials of sex, 39% of likely Alabama voters believe the allegations against Moore, compared to 33% who think they're untrue, with 27% unsure.
It's concerning. I'll vote Republican just because I disagree with the Democratic platform. I'm concerned about Roy Moore and the things that he's accused of.
I'm actually still undecided. I'm probably leaning to vote for Roy Moore, but I'm really concerned about the allegations as well.
It's my first time voting, so I feel like there's a lot of pressure.
When broken down by gender, women favor Jones in the Fox News poll by 20 points.
Get out and vote for Roy Moore. His vote is our Republican Senate, and it's needed. We need Roy to help us with the Republican Senate.
The Moore campaign has sent out a robocall recorded by President Trump. Alabama's senior senator Richard Shelby says he agrees with the president's desire to keep the Senate seat in GOP hands, but his vote is for a Republican write-in candidate.
I didn't vote for the Democrat or advocate for the Democrat, but I couldn't vote for Roy Moore. The state of Alabama deserves better.
In a series of 4 tweets responding to this morning's pipe bomb explosion in New York City, Moore vowed to help implement President Trump's travel ban, saying, "This incident underscores the continued threats our nation faces from those who want nothing more than to destroy the freedoms we enjoy." Monday night's event marks the second time Steve Bannon has joined Roy Moore on the campaign trail in the past week. In Midland City, Alabama, Jonathan Seri, Fox News.
Jonathan Seri, thank you. We're coming right back. There is much more ahead. Stay with us. Robert Mueller's partisanship is no secret now. His prosecutors exposed as pro-Clinton hacks. And we take up the deep state and the Dems' desperate efforts to delegitimize the President of the United States. And this daring wingsuiter showing off his precision flight skills above an extinct volcano in Chile. We'll show you the exhilarating video right here next. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Russian President Vladimir Putin today ordered his country's forces to begin withdrawing from Syria. Putin says the country's 2-year campaign to destroy the Islamic State has been completed. The Pentagon, by the way, remains very skeptical and issued this statement. Russian comments about removal of their forces do not often correspond with actual troop reductions and do not affect U.S. priorities in Syria. Joining us tonight, Fox News Middle East and terrorist analyst, Dr. Waleed Phares. Waleed, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
It looks like everybody won in Syria except for those who were killed and maimed and 5 million refugees. My God, what is going on?
Well, after all these years of warfare, and as you just mentioned, tens of thousands, in this case in Syria, 500,000 Syrians were killed. Now, the United States was part of the defeat of ISIS in most of eastern Syria. And as the Pentagon has mentioned, the Russians do not really withdraw. What they're saying is that for themselves to be able to redeploy. So now the question is, who's winning on the ground? Who won on the ground in Syria? My answer, Lou, it's Iran. It's allies. It's Hezbollah. It's the Assad regime. They took most of the land. We still have a chance. We still have our allies on the ground. Now we need to see what's the final outcome soon.
We have to see, yet Syria, an important part of the caliphate that has been blown to bits here by U.S. forces and the Russians as well over the course of the last 2 years. But where are we headed now? All of the discussion about Syrian refugees, all of the discussions about the people that have been dislocated by this war. Why isn't the UN, why isn't the United States, why isn't Russia doing something?
Well, first of all, the 5 members, permanent members of the Security Council they can issue, by not using a veto, of course, a resolution that would call on all Syrian refugees, those who are in Europe, here, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, to go back to secure the areas. And I'm very puzzled that this is not happening, because if we have most of the Syrian refugees going back home, then you can begin with a political solution, not before that.
Well, a political solution in this case is backed by some pretty fierce military power on the part of the United States. Let's go to this terrorist attack that was botched by a 27-year-old Bangladeshi national who entered this country through chain migration. The President of the United States has been demanding an end to the absurd U.S. immigration policy, substituting a meritocracy, a merit-based immigration system for what is a lotto, a chain migration system. Look at this chart, if you all will. 9.3 million green cards issued. New immigrants on the basis of family ties have entered the country in the past 11 years. Now that's extraordinary. Chain migration, there isn't even then a judgment. There's precious little vetting. There is, and the people that are being brought in who are using chain migration are largely unskilled, uneducated. How did we ever let this move to this level, to these depths?
What a subject, Lou. I myself, I know a couple things about it. I am an immigrant. I was an immigrant 27 years ago. And I can tell you one thing. The chain migration system is unfair to other immigrants, to other migrants, who basically could help this nation more. But what is important about this issue is that the terrorists or the jihadists now are using chain migration to bring more jihadists. So on the one hand, there should be a very serious discussion in Congress and in public opinion about should we use or not chain migration. That's one subject. But the other subject is, as you just said, vetting. Until now, we don't have a good system of vetting. The reason, in my view, is historic, because 8 or 9 years ago, any reference to an ideology that would help us vet has been abolished. So we need to reinvent the whole wheel about this counter-radicalism strategy.
I think we can say it straightforwardly. President Barack Obama unleashed the migration of these folks into this country, did so purposely. You look at the numbers, for example, Bangladeshi nationals. Think about this. More than 141,500 Bangladeshi nationals have entered the United States for no other reason than through the chain migration because of their family members. Do you know how many, just out of curiosity, Wally, do you know how many Bangladeshi nationals are in the United States right now, according to the Census Bureau?
I do not.
180,000. That means more than 4 times, almost 4 times, I should say, the number of people here they're here because of family ties than the people that we brought in under the normal immigration system. It's stunning. And we can't even get agreement on being rational and going to a merit-based system. It's deeply, deeply concerning, if not downright frightening. Waleed, your thoughts? You get the last word.
Well, basically, I agree with you. Migration reform has to be done, but has to be done very quickly, because it's not just an issue of immigration, which should be fair and natural and normal, but because of the jihadi threat that makes it even more pressing to review these issues.
Dr. Waleed Phares, always good to see you, Waleed. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. The question is, do you believe it's time for Congress to end chain migration?
Thank you.
Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. And please roll the video now and watch as this wingsuiter flies through the skies in Chile before zooming, look at this, through a target below. I mean, that's incredible. The target, in the form of a Chilean flag, perched atop a volcano for this extraordinary stunt. That's some kind of flying. Wow. Up next, wildfires continue to rage across Southern California. More than 200,000 acres devastated. We'll have the full report on firefighters' efforts to at least keep up with, if not control, those fires. That's next. Firefighters in Southern California battling wildfires for a second straight week. The massive blazes in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties growing to make up the 5th largest fire in the state's history. Fox News senior correspondent Adam Housley is in Carpinteria, California tonight with our report. That was not so good.
The fires in Southern California now stretching more than 150 miles from Santa Barbara to down near San Diego. 2 new fires blew up overnight, raining down embers northeast of San Diego, the firestorm tearing through everything in its path.
The embers are coming, the empty field over there caught on fire, and the neighbors, the whole fence line caught on fire. There's a propane explosion.
As people were trying to evacuate, this fire was being fanned by Santa Ana winds, and people could not get out of their homes fast enough.
And neither could these horses, a scene of horror and panic at a thoroughbred training center, as workers at the San Luis Rey facility did their best to help these racehorses escape. The flames moved faster than the animals could, and more than 24 didn't make it.
When a tornado hits the Midwest, there's no stopping it. When a hurricane hits the East Coast, there's no stopping it. When the Santa Ana winds come in, there's no stopping them.
President Trump now declaring a major disaster in the state, ordering federal aid to the areas where at least 6 fires have destroyed more than 500 structures, with another 20,000 plus threatened. More than 200,000 people have evacuated the fires that have burned more than 220 square miles. The region's biggest blaze, the Thomas Fire in Ventura County, is now in its 5th day, with nearly 90,000 people still under mandatory evacuation orders.
The magnitude of the winds and the firestorms and how fast things change, you just have to really be alert.
And while the winds are expected to die down over the weekend, that doesn't necessarily make things easier for fire
crews are going to have to be very careful.
And Lou, tonight the weather has cooperated. No winds at all today, allowing firefighters to make some significant headway. The fire's still marching down the hills here near Carpinteria, chewing up everything in its sights, but so far no homes have been lost today here in this area. Lou?
Adam Housley from Carpinteria. Up next, President Trump urging Alabama voters to get out and vote and back Judge Roy Moore. The West Point Academy, by the way, was at the Army-Navy game. We told everybody about that, but some networks are saying it was a mystery. We'll take that up and a lot more with Michael Goodwin right after the break. Stay with us. In our online poll last week, we asked, do you believe the Dems and the deep state allies are starting to see their smear campaign tactics backfire? 82% of you said yes. And joining me now, Michael Goodwin, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Fox Business contributor. Great to see you, Michael, and thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Let's start with fake news. The president calling out the Washington Post in particular, CNN in particular, as he has before. But I believe that we're seeing things really register right now. We saw, Dobbs, is it Weigel or?
Yeah, Weigel or Weigel. Yeah.
At the Post, I want to get it
right. The Washington Post.
The Washington Post, I should point that out.
The phony Post.
It was ridiculous. He put up a photo that he had to know was a sham and then took it down quickly when he was called on it, and then acts as though the president's being too rough on him, saying that he should be fired or resign.
He's a victim. Look, Lou, this goes back to the campaign, of course. And I mean, we've talked about extensively about this bring down Donald Trump, stop Donald Trump from being president. That's what we saw. It was the collapse of standards during the 2016 campaign, and it's continued now.
No, it's gotten worse.
Well, the journalists,
it's gotten worse.
They are still part of the Get Trump media. They're part of the attempt to bring him down.
They lost that ability, in my humble
estimation, but they haven't given up.
President.
But they haven't given up. I mean, I think that's.
I think every one of them should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
I think that they're, the fact that they are political activists working on behalf of the Dems, the deep state, and their owners, I guess, is really remarkable.
Yeah. Look, we've never seen anything like it in modern times. I mean, American journalism came a long way from the days when parties basically sponsored newspapers. We did have.
We're back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've regressed to where we were 75, 100 years ago. I mean, it is to no one's credit. It is not good for the country. I think it exacerbates all of the polarization. It teaches people how to hate the other side.
Well, speaking of the other side, Judge Roy Moore, West Point candidate, West Point graduate,
right.
Going back to the Army-Navy game, and there was all of this hullabaloo ginned up by the left-wing fake news media about where is he? He disappeared. Really just stupid stuff.
You know, what it proves over and over again is that if you don't do things exactly the way the Democratic media wants you to do it, somehow you're odd. You're off key. And you would think they would have learned this. All their predictions that Hillary Clinton would be president proved to be wrong. But they're still singing the same tune. If you don't do it our way, if you don't see it our way, if you don't draw our conclusions, you're wrong. It is the ignorance, really, the parochialism.
I think the American people are saying the hell with them.
Oh,
the Washington
sure.
Post, the New York Times, CNN. You can go through the list of all the broadcast networks. They're becoming, they become so stupid. I don't know whether to resent and be appalled by first their incompetence or their partisanship that they tried to disguise, not so cleverly.
Right.
Let's turn to, if we made the cabinet defiance here, Nikki Haley effectively going after the president on sexual harassment without a very clever expression falling from her mouth. Yeah. And James Mattis saying, go ahead and bring in transgenders to the military without apparently consulting the White House.
Well,
I should say, in all fairness, without either the White House or the Pentagon consulting with the courts.
Well, I think that's the issue. I mean, are they going to appeal or not? I mean, Mattis seems to be accepting these court rulings, but I think that's where we should be hearing from the Justice Department.
Do you think a four-star Marine general ought to have a sense of the chain of command?
I'm sure he does. As for Haley, I bet she wishes she had that one back, like the quarterback who threw an interception.
Yeah, except she threw several passes errantly, and it was just one down. Thanks for being with us. Great to see you. That's it for us tonight. We thank you for being with us. Ambassador John Bolton and Charlie Hurt among our guests here tomorrow. We hope you'll be with us. Thanks for joining us tonight. Good night from New York.